Silence is one of the most misunderstood powers in human relationships. Many people think that by going silent, they are protecting their dignity or maintaining control. They believe that silence will make the other person miss them, regret losing them, or finally understand their value. But there's a deeper truth that most never realize. Silence can be both a shield and a sword. It can protect you, but it can also cut away the very bond you once prayed for. Silence, when used without wisdom, becomes a wall that blocks healing instead of creating peace. When love has been shared between two people, the connection doesn't disappear overnight. There are threads that remain emotional, spiritual, and even energetic. Those threads still vibrate, still carry the memory of laughter, warmth, and belonging. When you suddenly go silent, those threads begin to weaken. The space between you becomes colder, not because you've lost your worth, but because you've stopped sending energy into what once connected you. Silence sends a message, yes, but not always the message you intend. Sometimes your silence says, I no longer care, even when your heart is still aching for him. Sometimes it says, I've moved on, even when your soul is still waiting for him to turn around. There is a difference between peace and distance. Peace comes from within. It's the calm that arrives after acceptance. Distance, however, comes from resistance. When you go silent to prove a point, or to make someone feel your absence, you are not at peace. You are still fighting a battle in silence. That kind of silence doesn't heal you, it drains you slowly. It keeps you checking your phone, replaying old conversations, waiting for him to notice that you've disappeared. That's not power, that's hidden pain disguised as self-control. If you really want him to come back, you have to understand the power of communication. Not desperate communication, but conscious communication. Silence should never be a weapon used to punish or manipulate. It should be a moment of reflection, a pause to gather your strength and clarity. But when that silence turns into avoidance, it kills connection. Men, like all human beings, don't read silence the same way women do. What you think is giving him space to realize your worth, he might interpret as rejection, coldness, or indifference. The male mind doesn't chase absence, it responds to energy. If your energy is closed off, he feels it, and when he feels that wall, he assumes the door is no longer open. Real love doesn't fear communication. It doesn't hide behind silence. It seeks understanding, even when words are heavy. Speaking your truth doesn't mean you're weak or desperate. It means you are emotionally intelligent enough to express what matters to you. Silence can never replace honesty. If you suppress your emotions, they don't disappear, they grow louder inside you. You start to overthink, to doubt, to build stories in your mind that may not even be true. You convince yourself that silence will make him wake up, but often it only leaves him confused. Think about it. How many relationships have ended not because of betrayal or lack of love, but because both people went silent at the wrong time? Because both thought the other should speak first. Because pride stepped in where communication should have existed. Silence creates distance where words could have built a bridge. When you choose silence as your only response, you surrender the power of clarity. You let assumptions rule over truth. And assumptions are dangerous. They create emotional chaos. True strength lies not in silence, but in balance. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet. It's knowing how to communicate without begging, how to express feelings without losing self-respect. Silence is powerful when it's used to protect peace, not when it's used to provoke reaction. When you're silent with wisdom, you're listening to yourself, not punishing the other person. But when you're silent out of fear, pride, or strategy, you disconnect from love itself. If you want him to come back, don't disappear completely into silence. Pull back, yes. Protect your peace, yes. But let your silence breathe communication, not confusion. Let it reflect calmness, not coldness. Sometimes a single, well-timed message filled with authenticity and grace can reach deeper than months of silence. When you communicate from a place of self-awareness, you remind him that your love is mature, not manipulative. You show them that your silence was never about ego, but about inner alignment. Silence can bring peace when it's rooted in strength, but it brings distance when it's rooted in pride. When you love someone deeply, silence can feel like punishment. It creates unanswered questions and emotional anxiety. The heart begins to wonder, did they stop caring? Are they gone forever? And once those doubts take root, it becomes harder for him to return, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's uncertain whether his presence is still welcomed. There's a deep difference between being silent and being centered. When you're centered, you don't need to speak all the time, but your energy still communicates love, warmth, and clarity. When you're silent but unhealed, your energy communicates rejection and pain. People feel energy before they hear words. If your silence is heavy with hurt, he will sense it and stay away. But if your silence is peaceful, grounded, and open, he'll feel safe to return. You see, the heart speaks a language that silence alone cannot translate. When you care, let it be known. When something matters, express it. Don't hide behind silence thinking it will bring him closer. Silence may create mystery, but mystery isn't always connection. Connection requires courage. The courage to speak, to reach out, to be honest, to say, this is how I feel and I want to understand. Communication is the soul of every relationship. It is the invisible thread that holds two hearts together, even when circumstances try to pull them apart. Without communication, love becomes a guessing game, and silence starts to fill in the blanks with fear, doubt, and insecurity. When two people stop talking, they stop understanding each other. And when understanding fades, even the strongest emotional bond begins to weaken. Communication is not just about words, it's about intention, energy, and emotional clarity. It's the way you make another person feel heard, seen, and safe. When you remove communication, you remove safety. In relationships, people often confuse communication with confrontation. They stay silent because they fear being misunderstood or rejected. But withholding what you truly feel doesn't protect the relationship, it starves it. Silence leaves the other person guessing, and no one can build trust on guesses. Trust is built through clarity, and clarity comes through open, honest communication. When emotions are left unspoken, they turn into distance. When misunderstandings aren't addressed, they turn into resentment. And when love isn't communicated, it turns cold. Not because it disappeared, but because it was never expressed. Many people go silent thinking that silence will make them look strong. They believe that by not reaching out, they will teach the other person a lesson. But communication isn't weakness, it's maturity. It's the ability to express what you feel without losing control, to speak your truth without anger, to share your pain without shame. When you communicate from a place of peace rather than pride, you create space for healing. You show emotional intelligence, the kind that builds bridges, not walls. Silence can make him wonder where he stands, but communication can remind him what you truly stand for. A man doesn't always understand silence as a sign of pain. Sometimes he interprets it as indifference. He assumes you've moved on, and so he stops trying. Men are not mind readers. They respond to energy that is clear, not energy that is confusing. If your silence is filled with pride or strategy, it sends the wrong signal. But when your words carry calm honesty, they invite understanding. Communication doesn't mean over-explaining or chasing. It means expressing what's true for you in a way that's calm, kind, and confident. You don't have to convince anyone to love you. You only have to communicate from a space of authenticity. Think about how many relationships have ended because one person said, "I thought you didn't care." Those words come from silence. Silence creates illusions. Illusions that the other person has stopped loving, stopped trying, stopped hoping. But sometimes both hearts are still hurting in silence, both waiting for the other to speak first. Communication breaks that cycle. It removes pride from the equation and replaces it with clarity. And clarity is freedom. It frees the heart from assumptions, from confusion, from the emotional fog that silence creates. When you communicate, do it with awareness. Don't rush, don't beg, and don't speak just to fill the silence. Speak to connect. Communication is not about winning an argument. It's about understanding the emotion behind the disagreement. It's about saying, I feel hurt. Fear me. It's about focusing on how you feel, not on blaming the other. When communication is grounded in emotional honesty rather than ego, it opens the door to reconciliation. It shows that you value peace more than pride. You have to remember that real connection is built through expression, not suppression. The more you hold in, the heavier your heart becomes, and that weight eventually leaks out in other ways through coldness, distance, or anger. Communication allows that emotional weight to be released in a healthy way. It's how healing begins. When you express yourself clearly, you give the other person a chance to understand, to reflect, and maybe even to change. But when you stay silent, you take away that chance completely. You choose closure over connection. A relationship thrives on emotional transparency. You don't need to speak every thought, but you must express what truly matters. Pretending everything is fine while you're hurting inside is not strength, it's denial. Strength is saying, this matters to me, even when your voice shakes. It's choosing to talk about what you fear losing instead of letting silence take it away. The most beautiful connections are not perfect. They're built by two people who choose to keep communicating even when it's uncomfortable. Communication doesn't always have to be words. It's also the tone you use, the patience you show, the energy you send. Sometimes a single message can carry more sincerity than 1,000 speeches if it comes from the heart. People don't remember your silence. They remember how your energy made them feel. When your words are calm, honest, and kind, they echo in the other person's mind long after the conversation ends. That's the kind of communication that touches the soul. Without communication, love becomes a mystery that neither person can solve. You begin to interpret silence instead of feelings, and interpretation often leads to misunderstanding. You start assuming what he's thinking instead of knowing it. You start reacting to your imagination instead of his truth. Communication brings everything into the light. It replaces guessing with understanding. It transforms tension into dialogue. It turns distance into connection. To communicate effectively, you must drop the need to be right. The goal is not to prove who's stronger or smarter. It's to find truth between two perspectives. When you listen as much as you speak, when you speak to understand rather than to attack, communication becomes healing. It becomes a mirror that reflects what both hearts truly feel. You cannot control how someone responds, but you can control how you express yourself. When you speak from integrity, you plant seeds of clarity that may take time to grow, but they always bear fruit. Communication is the bridge that carries love through storms. Without it, even the strongest connection collapses under the weight of silence. Every word spoken with understanding has the power to heal something that silence could never reach. Every moment you choose communication over withdrawal, you strengthen the bond that silence once tried to break. Energy speaks in ways words never can. It's the invisible language of the heart, the unspoken message behind every glance, every tone, every silence. You can say nothing and still communicate everything through your energy. Every relationship operates on this energetic exchange. It's how we sense love, rejection, warmth, or distance without a single word being spoken. When you're emotionally aligned, your energy feels open, calm, and inviting. But when you're filled with fear, pride, or resentment, your energy closes off. And even if you try to reach out, it carries tension instead of peace. Energy doesn't lie. It reveals what words often try to hide. You can tell when someone's heart is still open to you, even when they're not speaking. You feel it. You sense it in their presence, in their eyes, in the pauses between their words. That's the power of energy. It transcends sound and travels directly to the soul. When you want someone to return, especially someone you once loved deeply, it's not your silence that calls them back, it's your energy. You might think you've gone completely silent. that you've said nothing, but your energy is still speaking. It's saying, I'm hurt, or I miss you, or sometimes I'm done. And the other person can feel it even from a distance. The truth is, energy builds bridges where words fail. It can draw someone back toward you or push them further away, depending on what you're radiating. If you're filled with bitterness or anger, that energy becomes resistance. It tells the other person to stay away. But when you operate from a place of calm acceptance and quiet strength, that energy becomes magnetic. People are drawn to calmness because it feels safe. They're drawn to peace because it feels stable. When you align your energy with peace instead of pain, you stop chasing someone and start attracting them. You can say all the right words, but if your energy doesn't match, it won't reach them. You can text calmly while your heart is full of anxiety, and somehow they will still feel the tension. That's why alignment is so important. You must align your thoughts, emotions, and intentions before you try to communicate. Because when you speak from inner chaos, your words carry confusion. But when you speak from clarity, your words carry truth. Energy amplifies everything, both your peace and your pain. And the person you care about can sense which one is louder. People respond to energy before they respond to logic. They don't always remember what you said, but they will always remember how your presence made them feel. Think about it: the tone of your voice, the look in your eyes, the softness or hardness of your expression. These are all energetic signals. Even your silence has energy. If your silence is rooted in fear, it feels cold and distant. If it's rooted in self-respect, it feels grounded and powerful. You can't fake the energy behind your actions. It reveals what's really going on inside you. When you're trying to rebuild a broken connection, it's not about forcing conversations or pretending everything is fine. It's about becoming aware of the energy you're sending out. Are you approaching with love or with resentment? Are you speaking from truth or from ego? Because the energy behind your intentions determines how the other person receives you. When your energy is pure, when it comes from love, peace, and maturity, it creates an atmosphere where healing can happen. The moment your energy shifts from chasing to attracting, everything changes. Sometimes people pull away not because they stopped loving you, but because your energy changed. They felt the tension, the emotional heaviness, the unspoken anger. Even if you said nothing wrong, they could feel the storm beneath your calm words. That's how powerful energy is. It reveals what your words try to disguise. But the good news is, energy can also heal. When you shift your inner state, when you release the emotional weight you've been carrying, people feel that too. Your calmness sends a message of peace without you ever having to speak. Energy is contagious. When you hold resentment, you pass it on. When you radiate love, you spread it without effort. That's why healing yourself is the most powerful way to influence someone else's behavior. If you want someone to come back, don't chase them with words. Let your energy invite them. Let your calmness speak louder than your pain. Let your stability remind them of what they lost. People are naturally drawn to those who carry peace because peace feels rare, it feels safe, and it feels like home. Your energy is shaped by your thoughts and emotions. If your thoughts are filled with fear, what if he never comes back? Then your energy carries desperation. If your thoughts are filled with strength, I'll be fine no matter what happens, your energy carries confidence. And confidence is magnetic. The universe responds to energy, not words. Every emotion you hold creates a frequency that either attracts or repels what you want. When you live in fear, you attract more fear. When you live in peace, you attract peace. That's why emotional awareness is so powerful. It gives you control over what you're creating, even in silence. When you love someone deeply, you must understand that energy keeps the connection alive even when distance exists. You can't force love to return through manipulation or games. It returns naturally when the energy between two souls becomes aligned again. When your energy says, "I've found peace within myself," it creates curiosity, warmth, and safety. That's what pulls a man back. It's not your absence. It's the calm glow of your transformation. He feels the difference even if he can't explain it. The human heart recognizes truth through energy. It can't be fooled by performance. You can tell someone you're fine when you're not, but your energy will reveal your pain. You can act indifferent, but your energy will expose your longing. That's why emotional healing is the real secret to attraction. When you heal your heart, your energy changes. You no longer speak from need, you speak from balance. And that balance creates a silent magnetic pull that words could never achieve. When two souls are connected, they always feel each other's energy. Distance and silence can't break that connection. It only changes the frequency. That's why you must take care of your own vibration. You can't control how someone feels, but you can control the energy you send into the world. If you stay grounded, calm, and genuine, your energy will always reach the right heart at the right time. Pride is one of the most silent destroyers of relationships. It doesn't always shout, it doesn't always fight. It simply closes the heart 1 inch at a time until love can no longer reach through. Pride convinces you that silence will make you stronger, that withholding your feelings will make you seem in control. It tells you that reaching out first means weakness, that showing emotion is losing power. But pride is a liar. It masks fear. It hides the fear of rejection, of vulnerability, of being hurt again. And in doing so, it pushes away the very thing your heart is still praying for. So many relationships never find healing because both hearts are waiting for the other to speak first. Both are standing behind invisible walls, hoping the other will take the first step. And those walls, built from pride, get thicker with time. One day you wake up realizing that love didn't die from betrayal or distance. It died from silence mixed with ego. Pride whispers, don't text first. Don't say you miss them. Don't let them think you still care. And yet, while you obey that voice, your heart is breaking quietly inside, longing for the connection your pride keeps you from restoring. When love is genuine, communication should never feel like surrender. Expressing your heart is not begging, it's bravery. It takes more strength to speak with honesty than to hide behind pride. Pride says, I'll protect myself by not caring. But in truth, it protects nothing. It only delays healing. It creates emotional distance that grows wider each day until one or both people convince themselves that it's too late. But it's not too late because love doesn't vanish. It's pride that buries it. Pride is emotional armor that keeps you safe from rejection, but also keeps you imprisoned from connection. The truth is, most people don't regret being honest. They regret staying silent when they should have spoken. They regret letting their fear of looking vulnerable stop them from expressing what could have saved everything. Pride often disguises itself as strength, but real strength is humility. It's being able to say, I still care, without expecting a specific outcome. It's being able to reach out not because you're desperate, but because you're mature enough to value peace over power. Pride wants to win, but love wants to understand. And when you choose pride, you choose victory over connection, control over closeness, and distance over healing. You can't expect love to flow where ego blocks the path. Love requires softness, openness, and humility. It's about meeting halfway, not standing still. When you let pride speak louder than your heart, you lose not only the person, but also the lesson that love came to teach you. Every strong relationship you see is not one that never faced pride. It's one where someone decided to put it down. Someone decided that being right was not as important as being at peace. That's emotional maturity. The ability to humble yourself without losing your dignity. Pride thrives in the silence between two people. It feeds on unspoken emotions and turns them into assumptions. It turns, I'm hurt, into, I don't care, and I miss you, into, you mean nothing to me. The longer you allow pride to dominate your emotions, the more distorted your perception becomes. You start believing the stories your ego tells you, stories that paint you as unbothered, detached, and strong. But at night, When you're alone with your thoughts, you feel the emptiness that pride created. Pride gives you temporary satisfaction, but long-term loneliness. It wins the argument, but loses the relationship. It's easy to let pride make you feel powerful when you're angry or disappointed. It feels good to say, I don't need them, even when deep down, your soul is whispering that you do. Pride gives you the illusion of control, but it takes away peace. It makes you react instead of respond. It makes you guard your heart so tightly that love can't enter even if it tries. The more you feed pride, the smaller your heart becomes. Love and pride cannot coexist in the same space. One has to surrender for the other to survive. When you truly love someone, you must be willing to be real. Being real means dropping the mask of indifference and showing what you genuinely feel. It means saying, I'm hurt, instead of pretending you're fine. It means saying, I miss you, without worrying about how it makes you look. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's truth. And truth is what melts pride away. When you choose truth over ego, you create room for healing. You invite understanding, compassion, and forgiveness to enter. But when you let pride run the conversation, every word becomes a weapon instead of a bridge. Pride often disguises itself as self-respect, but there's a difference. Self-respect protects your boundaries. Pride protects your ego. Self-respect says, I know my worth, while pride says, I'll make you regret losing me. Self-respect is quiet strength. Pride is loud defensiveness. You can love yourself deeply and still reach out to someone with humility. You can protect your peace and still communicate your heart. Pride tells you to stay silent to prove a point, but self-respect tells you to speak up to find closure. The difference lies in intention, whether you're acting from fear or from strength. When you let go of pride, you allow love to breathe again. You give space for real conversation, for emotions to be seen and understood. You stop trying to control how the other person perceives you and instead focus on how you truly feel. That's where real connection happens. Not in the games, not in the waiting, but in the truth. Pride may win you applause from your ego, but love will always win peace in your heart. When you're willing to lower your defenses, to say what your heart has been holding back, you open a door that pride has kept locked. That door leads not only to reconciliation, but to inner freedom. There's an incredible power in humility. It disarms tension, it softens hardened hearts. It reminds the other person that you're not here to fight. You're here to understand. Pride builds distance, but humility builds bridges. When you stop trying to appear strong and start being real, you shift the entire energy of the connection. You no longer operate from fear, but from love. And love expressed through humility is far stronger than pride will ever be. Pride demands silence, but love asks for truth. And every time you choose truth, you weaken pride's control over your heart. To express without expecting is one of the most powerful and liberating lessons you can ever learn in love. Most people speak not to communicate, but to receive something in return, to be validated, to be understood, to be comforted, or to be loved back. But real emotional maturity begins when you express your truth simply, because it deserves to be spoken, not because you're hoping for a certain reaction. Expression is a form of release. It's how the soul exhales what the heart has been holding too long. When you express yourself from truth instead of expectation, you free yourself from the emotional chains that come from waiting for someone else to respond the way you want them to. Expectations turn love into pressure. They make communication a transaction instead of an act of authenticity. When you expect someone to respond a certain way, you're not really expressing yourself. You're negotiating emotionally. You're saying, I'll tell you how I feel, but only if you promise to give me what I want in return. That's not love, that's attachment. True expression doesn't demand, it reveals. It's an honest reflection of who you are in that moment. It says, this is my truth, and whether you understand it or not, it deserves to be spoken. When you express without expectation, you take your power back. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth or heal your wounds. You recognize that expressing your feelings doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. Silence, when it's filled with unspoken words, becomes a prison. It keeps your emotions locked inside where they grow heavier with time. But when you let your feelings out, you create emotional clarity. You release confusion and make space for peace. The purpose of expression is not to change another person, it's to cleanse your own heart. People often hold back from expressing themselves because they fear rejection. They fear that if they say how they really feel, it will push the other person away. But the truth is, silence creates more distance than honesty ever will. When you speak with pure intention, without anger, without blame, you open a window for understanding. You show the other person that your communication is not manipulation, it's authenticity. And authenticity has power. Even if they don't respond the way you hope, you've still honored your truth. You've released emotional energy that no longer needed to stay inside. When you express yourself without expecting, you also allow others the space to be themselves. You're no longer forcing them into your script or timeline. You're giving them the freedom to process things in their own way. That's what emotional intelligence looks like. It's recognizing that you can't control how others react, but you can control the energy behind your actions. When you express from peace, you stay powerful regardless of the outcome. You don't lose your balance because your words come from clarity, not chaos. This kind of expression doesn't mean you pour out your feelings impulsively. It means you communicate mindfully. You speak when your emotions have settled enough for your words to carry wisdom rather than pain. You express what's true, not what's reactive. When you talk from a calm place, your words have weight. They're not thrown in anger, they're placed with intention. You're not trying to win a fight, you're trying to be understood. And that's what separates emotional maturity from emotional impulsiveness. When you expect a specific response, you set yourself up for disappointment. You give your peace away to another person's reaction. But when you express for the sake of truth, you keep your peace regardless of how they respond. You stop measuring your value by their attention or approval. You realize that emotional freedom is not about control. It's about release. It's about being able to say what you need to say and then letting go. You're not responsible for how someone receives your truth. You're only responsible for delivering it with honesty and grace. Think of how much energy people waste holding back what they want to say because of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged. That fear turns into emotional weight. It keeps you overthinking every word, analyzing every silence. But when you finally express yourself, that weight lifts instantly. You no longer need to replay conversations in your head or wonder what could have been said differently. You've said your truth. That act alone brings clarity and closure. Sometimes, expression is not about fixing a situation. It's about freeing your heart from the burden of unspoken emotions. To express without expecting is also a sign of self-trust. It means you trust yourself enough to handle whatever comes after you speak your truth. You're no longer dependent on external validation. You understand that being true to yourself is more valuable than being liked by someone else. When you live this way, your communication becomes pure. You no longer hide behind manipulation or silence. You speak from a place of integrity, not insecurity. And integrity is magnetic. It draws respect, even from those who may not agree with you. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is one that carries no agenda. A simple, heartfelt expression like, "I wanted to say this because it matters to me," can shift the entire energy between two people. When there's no pressure attached, the other person feels safe. They don't feel cornered or controlled. They feel invited into your truth. That's the kind of communication that opens hearts rather than closing them. To express without expecting is also a spiritual act of surrender. It's saying, "I've done my part. I've spoken my truth. Whatever happens now is beyond me." It's the release of emotional control. It's the moment you stop fighting to be heard and start trusting that the truth will always find its way to where it needs to go. You may not always get the response you hope for, but you will always get the peace you need. Because peace doesn't come from outcomes. It comes from alignment. When you speak from love, when your intention is clarity rather than control, you change the energy of every interaction. You no longer speak to win or to convince. You speak to connect. You no longer wait for someone to understand you before you feel complete. You express yourself because your completeness no longer depends on them. You express because your voice deserves to be free. You express because truth unspoken becomes pain unhealed. You express because love, when communicated with sincerity, has power even when it's not returned the way you expect. There comes a time in every relationship when silence is no longer peaceful. It becomes a wall that separates two hearts that once moved in rhythm. When love begins to fade, people often choose silence as a defense mechanism. They pull away, hoping the absence will make the other person realize their worth. But when the silence stretches too long, it stops being a message and becomes a memory. Silence is powerful, yes, but it's also dangerous when it lingers beyond healing. If you stay silent forever, you might lose what could have been saved with just a few honest words spoken from the heart. Sometimes one conversation, one message, one act of vulnerability can undo months of confusion. Yet pride, fear, and overthinking convince us to wait. We tell ourselves, if they care, they'll reach out. Or I look weak if I speak first. Meanwhile, both hearts ache, both minds replay moments that could have ended differently, and both souls stay stuck in the same emotional loop. The truth is, silence doesn't always mean strength. It often means surrender to fear. It means letting time make a decision that love should have made. Silence is often mistaken for healing, but real healing requires truth. It requires clarity. It requires facing the discomfort of honesty. Silence may protect your ego, but it rarely brings peace to your heart. You can pretend you've moved on. You can tell yourself that silence is closure, but deep down you know it's avoidance. It's easier to go silent than to admit, I still care, or I'm still hurt. But every word you swallow becomes a weight inside you. It doesn't disappear. It grows heavier until it turns into regret. There are countless moments when people walk away from relationships not because love was gone, but because communication was. A misunderstanding left unspoken becomes resentment. A simple apology never sent becomes distance. A truth left unsaid becomes a lifetime of what ifs. People often believe that silence will keep their dignity intact, but it's often dignity built on heartbreak. Dignity means self-respect, not emotional detachment. You can still maintain your worth while expressing what needs to be said. Silence may keep you from rejection, but it also keeps you from reconciliation. When you choose silence instead of expression, you leave room for assumptions. You allow the other person to create their own version of the story. Maybe they think you don't care. Maybe they think you've moved on. Maybe they think your silence is final when it was never meant to be. Communication clears confusion, but silence feeds it. And once someone believes your silence means indifference, they begin to mirror it. Two people, both hurting, both waiting, both silent, slowly drift apart while love watches helplessly from a distance. Healing doesn't come from running away from the truth. It comes from facing it. If something still matters to you, speak it. If you still care, say it. You don't have to chase. You don't have to plead, but you owe it to your heart to express what's real before silence erases the chance forever. Sometimes, one genuine message can remind someone that the door isn't completely closed. It can reopen dialogue, bring understanding, and soften walls that silence made stronger. There's a kind of strength in vulnerability that silence can never offer. It takes courage to say, I miss you, when your pride tells you not to. It takes maturity to express forgiveness instead of holding grudges in silence. Silence may seem easier because it requires no action, but that ease often leads to emptiness. Speaking up, on the other hand, requires courage But that courage can change everything. It can transform tension into peace and distance into clarity. You may not always get the response you hope for, but you will always know that you gave truth a chance. Many people confuse silence with peace because silence is quiet. But quiet doesn't mean peace. Peace is emotional alignment, a settled heart that no longer battles with the unspoken. Silence without resolution is only noise turned inward. It's an emotional storm hiding under still waters. You may appear calm, but inside you're replaying words that were never said, rehearsing conversations that never happened. That kind of silence doesn't free you. It binds you to the past. When you stay silent for too long, you also silence your intuition. You stop listening to the voice within you that says, say it before it's too late. That voice is often right, because time has a way of changing people, and what can be fixed today may not be possible tomorrow. The longer you stay silent, the harder it becomes to reconnect. The more walls you build, the fewer chances you have to rebuild what mattered. Love is a living energy. It needs expression to survive. Without communication, it withers, no matter how deep it once was. You might think you're protecting yourself by being silent, but sometimes you're only protecting your pain. You're keeping it alive by refusing to release it. Expression doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means peace for yourself. It's how you tell your heart, I've said what I needed to say. I can let go now. Silence keeps wounds open because it leaves questions unanswered. Words, even if they don't bring someone back, can bring you closure. To stay silent forever is to risk losing the opportunity to be understood. It's to let fear speak louder than love. And the most tragic part of silence is that it often hides the most beautiful truths. The ones that could have healed, the ones that could have rebuilt trust, the ones that could have reminded someone how much they mattered. Sometimes the right words spoken at the right time can awaken what silence almost buried. Communication doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It means you care enough to give clarity, to bring light into the darkness that silence creates. When you communicate, you give the other person a chance to understand, to respond, to reflect. You give love a voice. You give peace a path. Silence may seem powerful, but power without purpose is isolation. Silence can protect your ego, but communication protects your heart. And when the heart is at peace, that's when true strength lives, not in the absence of words, but in the courage to speak them.